On this Friday night, the Prime Minister visits BC's wildfire zone. His promise to the province and the Northwest Territories.
That we would continue to be there to support
the proactive measures smaller communities want the feds to take. Insurance companies face increasing demand.
Canada is definitely becoming a riskier place to operate.
The fears among Canadian customers. And scowling after surrendering.
I did nothing wrong.
The captivation and political capitalization of this historic mugshot.
Global National with Farah Nasser.
Good evening to you. Thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with a bittersweet homecoming for BC evacuees. A week after apocalyptic wildfires tore through the Okanagan region, some people are back home tonight, but some don't have a place to go back to as more evacuation orders lift. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau also touched down in the region today, meeting with local officials for the first time since the province declared a state of emergency last Friday. Now, while a sense of relief is blanketing many parts of the province, many are still in danger. Neetu Garcha begins our coverage from West Kelowna.
As fire crews conduct more controlled burns near West Kelowna, smoke is visible on the mountainside. Below that mountainside, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau making comments at the local fire hall.
We are going to continue to be there as a federal government in supporting, whether it's with the Canadian Armed Forces, whether it's with federal supports.
But Trudeau, while reinforcing Ottawa's commitment to help, fell short of making any new announcements, including for the Northwest Territories, where 70% of the population has been evacuated for several weeks.
We would continue to be there to support as people are facing the challenges of returning and rebuilding in some cases.
The Prime Minister also visited officials at the West Bank First Nation government offices.
Brought my daughter Ella.
After introducing his daughter, Ella Grace, who shook hands and briefly spoke with the local leaders, the Prime Minister met with some of those involved in the region's wildfire response.
So it ignited over here originally, jumped across the lake.
Our firefighters saved thousands of homes.
Among them is the mayor of the district of Lake Country, trying to find moments of normalcy after homes were destroyed and evacuation orders are still in place. He says with climate change making extreme weather events more frequent, the federal government needs to step up with infrastructure funding for smaller communities.
To support people in times like this, the road networks, having enough water to fight the fire, fire smarting communities. The federal government, it's time to stop our communities having to beg for grants all the time and come to us with stable and constant funding.
I think we need to start looking at that around emergencies. We certainly need to look at that around infrastructure investments so that cities can make the plans to continue to grow.
Notable progress on the fires helped ensure more residents could return home Friday, but there is still a very active firefight, which officials say is far from over. The Federal Minister of Emergency Preparedness announced today BC's request for more assistance from the Canadian Forces has been approved, with members on their way to help with firefighting operations in areas like this. Farah?
Neetu Garcha on West Bank First Nation. Thank you, Neetu. And a couple hours north of Kelowna in BC's Shuswap region, a section of the Trans-Canada Highway that was closed has reopened today after being closed due to wildfires for the past week. Officials are stressing that drivers will not be able to stop along the stretch of road to see the heavy damage from the Bush Creek East wildfire. A big chunk of that damage belongs to the nearby Little Shuswap Lake First Nation.
We lost a lot, 31 houses, I think, was the latest count that could climb. Yeah, we lost houses, but the important thing, that house doesn't become a home unless family is in there, and everybody from the community got out safely.
And later in the newscast, you're going to hear from those in the Shuswap region who are still fighting the wildfires that are threatening their homes. Now, climate change is spurring disaster after disaster, and cleanup is costing Canadians more each and every year. Homeowners and insurance companies are tallying up the enormous price tag from this historic wildfire season, which is likely into the billions by now. And because of it, premiums are going up. And now there are some concerns that insurance companies may one day pull out of some areas altogether. Touria Izri reports.
Wildfires, tornadoes, flooding. This summer has been extreme, expensive, and exhausting.
Oh my God, a tornado just hit our house.
Canadians across the country are spending hours dealing with insurance companies.
Everything's a write-off, but they told us it'll probably be months before everything's addressed.
A torrential downpour hit Ottawa this month. Christine Fagan lost her car.
Insurance has been doing what they can, I guess. They're really slammed.
They're getting more slammed every year. In 2010, Canadian insurance companies saw losses of $632 million annually. Now, that number is more than 3 times higher. Last year, losses totaled almost $3.5 billion. And 2023 is on track to be even costlier.
Well, insurers price risk, and Canada is definitely becoming a riskier place.
Insurance premiums rose between 5 and 15% this year, with some of the biggest increases in Alberta and BC. For homeowners who have filed repeated claims,
how many times have you been flooded on this street?
At least 5.
There are fears they could be dropped altogether.
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
State Farm recently pulled out of California because of the relentless wildfires. For now, Canadian risk management experts doubt that will happen here.
I think there are a lot of actions being taken to try to ensure we don't get there, but I think it is a long-term concern.
Researchers say insurance is only one part of the puzzle. Homes in Canada need to become more resilient to the effects of climate change, and that means changing the way they're built.
The system's a little slow in Canada.
Glenn McGilvray manages the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction. He wants to see more incentives for builders to flood and fireproof homes.
There's already a huge shortage of homes. We can't afford to be taking hundreds and sometimes thousands of homes offline each year due to hazards.
Hazards in a climate crisis that's also creating a financial one. Touria Izri, Global News, Ottawa.
It's also been a full week since wildfires forced thousands to leave their homes in the Northwest Territories. And there, the firefight is far from over. Today, the Territories Premier, along with Alberta's Premier, visited an evacuation centre in Calgary. That city is hosting more than 2,700 evacuees.
68% of our population has been evacuated. Many of the people in the north have never left the north. They're not familiar with big cities. I know it's a struggle. Myself, I had to evacuate as well. And the amount of people that were standing on the roads, giving out gift cards, opening their homes, handing out water and things, I can't express how much gratitude and how much it meant to us.
Evacuees are staying at 48 hotels around the city with no word on when they'll be able to go back home. Joining us now from the Northwest Territories capital is the mayor of Yellowknife, Rebecca Alte. Mayor, thanks for being with us. I know it's been an unimaginable week, and I can see you're still in your office in Yellowknife. So what does the town feel like, and how close is the fire compared to this time last week?
Yeah, so it is. It's been a tough week for everybody. You know, the firefighters working hard on this fire, residents, of course, who have been evacuated. It's been a really challenging time. Today's pretty smoky in Yellowknife, and unfortunately it's pretty hot, so that can cause some problems for the fires. The potential for flare-ups, crown, so the fire jumping from tree to tree. So it'll be a challenging 48 hours for the firefighters.
Okay. Do you foresee people trying to return early? I know people are anxious to get back home. And if so, what are you planning to do to prevent them from entering areas? Because, of course, the area is still under an evacuation order.
Yeah, exactly. So the fire is still a threat to Yellowknife, and the territorial government's evacuation order is still in place. And there is a clause in it, the legislation that says, you know, if you do enter this evacuation order, there are penalties, fines, etc. We haven't really had many people looking to return from the south. Of course, everybody wants to, but in practice, we haven't seen that. We've seen more from folks in communities around Yellowknife who have had some supply chain issues looking to come to Yellowknife for grocery shopping, but not necessarily Yellowknifers who have tried to drive back up.
Will you be, enforcing, having enforcement there while if people do try to come back up?
There is a check stop on the highway. So the highway south is open, folks can go, but the highway north, there is a check stop. So the RCMP, I believe, are the ones that are manning that. And that's in the South Slave area in the Enterprise. So yeah, again, folks, please stay where you are. You're safe there. The fire is still a threat to Yellowknife here.
Mayor Rebecca Alte joining us from her office in Yellowknife, where she's been all week. Thank you so much for your time.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford says he's confident nothing criminal happened when his government removed land from a protected green belt for housing development. It's the first time we've heard from Ford since the RCMP announced it would assess whether to investigate the deal.
If they decide to investigate, they haven't decided yet, but if they do, I take it very serious, extremely serious. And I'll have zero tolerance if there's any nonsense going on.
The Auditor General found developers who owned 15 sites of land removed from the Greenbelt just last year now stand to see property values rise by over $8 billion. British police say they're investigating the deaths of 88 people who brought products from Canadian-based websites allegedly offering lethal substances to people at risk of harming themselves. The probe centers around several international inquiries sparked by the arrest of a Mississauga man named Kenneth Law earlier this year. Police allege he used a series of websites to market and sell sodium nitrate, a substance commonly used to cure meats that can be deadly if it's ingested. It is an image that will be seared into the history books. Donald Trump is the first former American president to have a mugshot after he surrendered at Atlanta's main jail on Thursday. He's accused of leading a criminal conspiracy to overturn Georgia's 2020 election results. Yet, the infamous new image could be a powerful tool in Trump's bid to retake the presidency. Jackson Prosco is in Atlanta. Jackson, what's the political calculus here?
Farah, Donald Trump knew he would be photographed when he turned himself in Thursday night. Reports suggest the former president decided he wanted to project an image of defiance with his mugshot, knowing the picture would instantly be shared across the U.S. and around the world. Within minutes of its release, Trump's team was merchandising the photo to fundraise, selling T-shirts and seeking online donations to the campaign. Now, there's a tinge of irony here because they're using the photo with the tagline "Never Surrender," ignoring the fact that the picture was only taken because Trump surrendered on those charges of racketeering and conspiracy. But Trump knows small-time donors buy his unsubstantiated claims of political persecution. And from his perspective, that one photo is the perfect tool for building a comeback, even if it looks unpresidential.
It's already becoming very clear that the mugshot has increased his support once again and will encourage at least some of them to give even more money to him. Among Republicans, twice as many people are more inclined to support him strongly.
Now, like so many things in American politics, that image cuts both ways. Trump's opponents will use it as a stark reminder of the crimes he's accused of, namely trying to overturn an election he lost. You can expect to see ads highlighting the fact that he's the only presidential candidate facing the prospect of jail time. How it all lands with voters will likely be split down party lines. Some will see it as proof that the law applies evenly to all, even a former president, while many of Trump's supporters will likely see evidence of Trump's claims that he's the victim of unfair prosecution. Farah?
Jackson Prosco in Atlanta. Thank you, Jackson. Hawaii's main power provider gets jolted with another lawsuit. Coming up, the mounting accusations over the catastrophic wildfires. The county of Maui is now suing Hawaii's biggest electricity provider for civil damages after those deadly wildfires that destroyed the town of Lahaina. The suit alleges the Hawaiian Electric company inexcusably kept their power lines energized. That's despite warnings high winds could knock them down and spark fires. It also accuses the provider of lacking safety plans to shut off power. The for-profit company serving 95% of Hawaiians is also facing several lawsuits from residents and investors over the disaster. So far, 115 people are confirmed dead from the tragedy, and there are fears that that number is going to increase. On Thursday, Maui officials released the names of 388 people still unaccounted for, hoping to learn more about their whereabouts.
We do know that once those names come out, it can and will cause pain but we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can possibly to make this investigation the most complete, thorough to date.
The number is a sharp drop from earlier this week when the FBI reported more than 1,000 people were still missing. Though as Eric Sorensen reports, many questions remain about how this tragedy unfolded.
Power line just went down.
As the first fires burned on the outskirts of Lahaina, Shane True couldn't know how inadequate his garden hose would be.
You get all this wind blowing and now you got a fire. That was fuel in just in a matter of minutes.
In spite of wind and fire warnings, authorities were not prepared and have been on the defensive ever since. Maui's mayor this week said he was unaware of the extent of the crisis as it unfolded.
I can't tell you what contributed to what.
As hurricane winds intensified east of Maui, the dry grasslands were a perfect fuel for any spark blown by the winds down into Lahaina. It all happened so quickly. At 9 a.m. on August the 8th, that small morning fire was declared under control. At 9:26, a warning was issued for hurricane winds. Electrical workers couldn't keep up with power lines coming down. By 3:30, multiple fires had flared up. Evacuations had begun. At 4:45, fires were burning in many neighborhoods. For hours, residents desperately tried to escape. At 9:45 p.m., the Coast Guard was rescuing people who'd fled into the ocean. By midnight, fires were out of control. Lahaina was being utterly destroyed. Many residents received no warnings. Sirens in the community were left silent.
Do you regret not sounding the sirens?
I do not.
The fire chief said those sirens, primarily for tsunami warnings, could have sent people running towards the flames. He later resigned.
We're not stupid. We know what a fire looks like.
As downed power lines sparked fires, the utility kept the power on. Turning it off would have disconnected vital communications. The governor says there is a lot to investigate.
We will get to the bottom of exactly how the fire started, how our emergency procedures and protocols need to be strengthened.
It now appears early fires were not properly mopped up. The disaster is a hard lesson, and not just for officials in Hawaii.
It's a ticking time bomb.
UBC's Dwayne Tennant is an expert who had his own front row seat to the recent fires in Kelowna. He says governments everywhere must do more to manage grass and woodlands near communities that will increasingly fuel wildfires.
Rather than constantly being reactive and dealing with emergencies, but we need to be able to control the severity of these fires by engaging in fuel management.
Back in Maui, officials are under intense scrutiny once again as they look now for the dead. Eric Sorensen, Global News.
Ahead, a blow to a popular tissue brand for Canadian consumers. The Spanish government has started legal proceedings to suspend its soccer federation chief after his unsolicited kiss following Spain's Women's World Cup win.
No voy a dimitir. No voy a dimitir.
Luis Rubiales is under fire for kissing star player Jenny Hermoso on the lips while handing out medals on Sunday. He says the kiss was consensual. Hermoso says it was not. Some members of the team say they will not play until Rubiales has been removed from his job. One of the most recognizable tissue brands in Canada is about to make a clean exit. The maker of Kleenex tissue says it will stop selling the product here this month, but will still serve the professional market. Its corporate parent says the brand has been faced with unique complexities in this country. The faces beyond the flames. Next, the personal stories of those enduring BC's harsh wildfire season. The reopening of a section of Highway 1 in BC's Shuswap region was a major sign of success there. But officials also confirmed today that more than 130 structures have been lost. Jamie Dahl is in the region speaking to those who are still fighting and who refuse to leave.
Another night living on fast food and going nowhere fast in a box store parking lot. How many trucks?
I brought 6.
You brought 6 trucks?
Yeah.
How did you Corey Tomlin will eventually be returning home with a lot more than his trucks. His cat went into labor and had 4 kittens while he was fleeing.
Maybe the stress, I guess.
And on day 2 of living in this Salmon Arm parking lot, his dog delivered 11 puppies.
Really stressful. We just want to go back home.
It's been 1 week since fire raced over these mountains, invading communities, forcing hundreds from their homes. The burden has been immense.
Oh, lots of stress. Lots of stress.
This man has been fighting to keep his house safe while trying to visit his 101-year-old dying father, who passed away.
Yeah, that's pretty tough. Yeah. Again, unfortunately, he's in Kelowna and we're here dealing with this.
What are you missing the most?
Power. Yeah. It's nice and quiet, but you still need power.
On the other side of the lake, the communities of Anglemont and St. Ives have been cut off for a week. Food is starting to spoil. The community association is feeding the village, doing what it can.
We really need fresh produce, lettuce, celery, anything fresh.
I think I've had like 3 nights of Mr. Noodles now.
Boy. But it's tough to hold on to humor, surrounded by so much hardship.
I don't have words to describe it. There's so much devastation happening, right? We've been pretty lucky here.
But help is on the way. This barge is loaded down with propane, food, and other supplies on its way over to Anglemont and St. Ives.
Oh, I know that there's some households running out of food, and it will be very, very important to get this in. Yeah. And we're very excited.
Nobody knows when normalcy will return, but they are sure over all of this. Jamie Daw, Global News, Anglemont, BC.
And that's Global National for this Friday night. I'm Farah Nasser. On behalf of our whole crew here, I want to thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us. Tonight's Your Canada is Dow's Lake in Ottawa. We love seeing your Canada, so please keep emailing us your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Until tomorrow, take care of yourselves and take care of each other.